The North Hollywood Shootout, also known as the Battle of North Hollywood, was a confrontation between two heavily armed and armoured bank robbers, Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Matasareanu, and members of the Los Angeles Police Department in the North Hollywood district of Los Angeles, California. It occurred on February 28, 1997. Both robbers were killed, 12 police officers and 8 civilians were injured, and numerous vehicles and other property were damaged or destroyed by the nearly 2,000 rounds of ammunition fired by the robbers and police. Our episodes deal with serious and often distressing incidents. If at any time you feel like you need support, please contact your local crisis centre. This episode involves gun violence. It may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Larry Eugene Phillips Jr., born 20th of September 1970, and Decibel Stephen Harrell Emilian Matasareanu, born the 19th of July 1966, first met at a Gold's Gym in Venice, Los Angeles in 1989. Phillips and Matasareanu had mutual interests in weightlifting, bodybuilding and firearms. Before meeting, Phillips was a habitual offender responsible for multiple real estate scams and counts of shoplifting. Matasareanu, born in Romania to parents who relocated to Los Angeles in 1974, was a qualified electrical engineer and ran a relatively unsuccessful computer repair business. On July 20th, 1993, Phillips and Matasareanu robbed an armoured car outside a branch of First Bank in Littleton, Colorado. On October 29th of the same year, they were arrested in Glendale, northeast of Los Angeles, for operating a stolen vehicle. A subsequent search of their vehicle, after Phillips surrendered with a concealed weapon, found 2 semi-automatic rifles, 2 handguns, more than 1,600 rounds of rifle ammunition, and 1,200 rounds of 19mm Parabellum, and a .45 ACP handgun ammunition, radio scanners, smoke bombs, improvised explosive devices, body armour vests, and 3 different California license plates. Initially charged with conspiracy to commit robbery, both served 100 days in jail and were placed on 3 years of probation due to plea bargaining. After their release, most of their seized property was returned to them, except for the confiscated firearms and explosives. On June 14, 1995, Phillips and Matasareanu ambushed a Brinks armoured car in Winnetka, Los Angeles, killing 1 guard, Herman Cook, and seriously wounding another. In May 1996, they robbed 2 branches of Bank of America in the San Fernando Valley area of Los Angeles, stealing approximately $1.5 million. The pair were dubbed the High Incident Bandits by investigators due to the weaponry they had used in 3 robberies prior to their attempt in North Hollywood. On the morning of February 28, 1997, after months of preparation that included extensive reconnaissance of their intended target, the Bank of America branch, located at 6600 Laurel Canyon Boulevard, Phillips and Matasareanu armed themselves with a semi-automatic HK-91 and several illegally converted weapons, 2 Norinco Type 56S rifles, a fully automatic Norinco Type 56S1, and a fully automatic Bushmaster XM15 dissipator. The robbers also allegedly filled a jam jar with gasoline and placed it in the back seat with the intention of setting the car and weapons on fire to destroy evidence after the robbery. Phillips wore approximately 40 pounds or 18 kilos of equipment, including a Type 3A bulletproof vest and groin guard, a load-bearing vest with multiple military ammo pouches, and several pieces of homemade body armour created from spare vests, covering his shins, thighs and forearms. Matasareanu wore only a Type 3A bulletproof vest, but included a metal ballistic plate to protect vital organs. Additionally, Each man had a watch sewn onto the back of one glove in order to monitor their timing. Before entering, they took the barbiturate, phenobarbital, prescribed to Matasareanu as a sedative to calm their nerves. Phillips and Matasareanu, driving a white 1987 Chevrolet Celebrity, arrived at the Bank of America branch at the intersection of Laurel Canyon Boulevard and Archwood Street in North Hollywood at around 9:16 a.m. They set their watch alarms for 8 minutes, the usual police response time they had estimated. To come up with this time frame, Phillips had used a radio scanner to monitor police transmissions prior to the robbery. As the two were walking in, they were spotted by two LAPD officers, Lauren Farrell and Martin Perello, who at that moment were driving down Laurel Canyon in a patrol car. Officer Farrell issued a call on the radio.
5840, requesting assistance. We have a possible 211 in progress at the Bank of America. Bank of America, Laurel Canyon north of Kittredge. We have shots fired.
211 is the code for robbery.
39 shows responding code 3.
All units, officer needs help. At the Bank of America, Laurel Canyon north of Kittredge. Officer needs help. Bank of America, Laurel Canyon north of Kittredge.
As they entered the bank, each armed with an Orinco Type 56 S1 rifle, Phillips and Matasareanu forced a customer leaving the ATM lobby near the entrance into the bank and onto the floor. A security guard inside saw the scuffle and the heavily armed robbers and radioed his partner in the parking lot to call the police. The call was not received. Phillips shouted, "This is a fucking hold-up," before he and Matasareanu opened fire into the ceiling in an attempt to scare the approximately 30 bank staff and customers and to discourage resistance. Matasareanu shot open the bulletproof door, which was designed to resist only low-velocity rounds, and gained access to the tellers and vault. The robbers forced assistant manager John Villagrana to open the vault and begin to fill their money bag. However, due to a change in the bank's delivery schedule, the vault contained significantly less than the $750,000 the gunman had expected. Matasareanu, enraged at this development, argued with Villagrana and demanded more. In an apparent show of frustration, Matasareanu then fired a full drum magazine of 75 rounds into the bank's safe, destroying much of the remaining money. He then attempted to open the bank's ATM, but due to a change in policies, the branch manager no longer had access to the money inside. Before leaving, the robbers locked the hostages in the bank vault. In the end, the two left with $303,305 and 3 die packs, which later exploded, ruining the money they stole. Outside, the first responding officers heard the gunfire within the bank and made another radio call reporting shots fired, before taking cover behind their patrol vehicle.
All units, officer needs help. Shots fired Laurel Canyon north of Kittredge. Laurel Canyon north of Kittredge at the Bank of America. Units respond northbound. Units are on the south side.
We can use a unit on the south side also, but have one come from north.
Units respond northbound.
Suspects are in the bank. Do not approach the bank.
The suspects are inside of the bank. It's a 211 in progress inside the Bank of America, Laurel Canyon, north of Kittredge. Suspects are inside of the bank.
A3, I want one unit on the north side, I want a unit on the south side, and I want a unit on the back, if possible.
While the robbers were still inside, additional North Hollywood Division patrol and detective units arrived and took strategic positions at all 4 corners of the bank, establishing a perimeter around it. At approximately 9:24 a.m, Phillips exited through the north doorway and, after spotting a police cruiser 200 feet away, opened fire for several minutes. In the initial shooting, Phillips wounded Sergeant Dean Haynes, officers Martin Whitfield, James Zaboravan and Stuart Guy, and detectives William Krulak and Tracy Angeles, as well as 3 civilians that had taken cover behind Sergeant Haynes' patrol car.
All units also requested help at the bank.
Stay down. The suspects are shooting AK-47.
All units at the Bank of America, stay down. Shots are being fired, automatic fire.
Code 3.
SWAT is being notified, code 3. All officers stay down. Shots are being fired from AK-47. There is an officer down. All units, officer needs help, Lower Canyon and Kittredge, officer down. Officer needs help, Lower Canyon and Kittredge, officer down.
15 L10, requesting SWAT, code 3.
L10 SWAT being notified, RA is en route for the officer down. All officers stay down.
Phillips also fired at an LAPD helicopter flown by Charles D. Perrigy Jr. as it surveyed the scene from above, forcing it to withdraw to a safer distance.
15 L20 advise the air unit to get some altitude. Suspect has an automatic weapon.
Air unit, keep your altitude. Shots are being fired.
Phillips briefly retreated inside, then re-emerged through the north doorway, while Matasareanu exited through the south exit. Phillips and Matasareanu continued to engage the officers, firing sporadic bursts into the patrol cars that had been positioned on Laurel Canyon, in front of the bank, and in the parking lot across the street.
Suspects on the north side of the building. They're walking around like nothing. They got AK-47s, 2 of them are dressed in all black, heavy body armor.
The suspects are exiting the bank on the north side of the building, armed with AK-47s, wearing heavy body armor. Wearing all black clothing.
Yes, Air 8, these guys are firing at the officers. Tell officers to stand back. These guys are firing at the
All
officers.
officers, get back per the air unit. The suspects are firing at all officers. Stay down per the air unit.
Standard issue sidearms carried by most local patrol officers at the time were 9mm pistols or 38 special revolvers. Some patrol cars were also equipped with a 12-gauge shotgun. Phillips and Matasareanu carried Norinco Type 56 rifles, a Chinese AK-47 variant, and a Bushmaster XM15 dissipator with a 100-round drum, both of which had been illegally modified to be select fire capable, as well as a Heckler & Koch HK91 rifle and a Beretta 92 FS pistol. The robbers wore homemade body armour, which successfully protected them from handgun rounds and shotgun pellets fired by the responding officers. This was compounded by the fact that most of the LAPD officers' service pistols had insufficient range at longer distances, where most officers found themselves positioned relative to the bank entrance. An officer was heard on the LAPD police frequency approximately 10 to 15 minutes into the shootout, warning other officers that they should not stop the getaway vehicle.
Unknown units requesting someone to stop the vehicle north of Kittredge. It's a gray vehicle.
Innocent prospect vehicle, do not stop it. They've got automatic weapons. There's nothing we have that can stop them.
Additionally, the officers were pinned down by the heavy sprays of gunfire coming from the robbers, making it extremely difficult to attempt a headshot with their handguns. Several officers acquired 5 AR-15 style rifles from a nearby gun store to combat the robbers.
To any unit that is available to go to B&B and pick up some weapons.
They're requesting someone to go to BAD and pick up weapons.
2 locations adjacent to the bank's north parking lot provided good cover for officers and detectives. Police likely shot Phillips with their handguns while Phillips was still firing and taking cover near 4 vehicles adjacent to the north wall of the bank. One location that Officer Richard Zelensky of Valley Traffic Division effectively used for cover was the adjacent Del Taco restaurant's west wall, 351 feet from Phillips. Zelensky fired 86 9mm rounds at Phillips and is believed to have hit Phillips during their exchange. Zelensky was also able to use this position to draw Phillips' fire away from Sergeant Haynes and Officer Whitfield, who were both wounded and had only marginal cover behind trees across Laurel Canyon Boulevard. The other location that proved advantageous for the LAPD was the backyard of 6641 Agnes Avenue. A cinder block wall provided relative cover for several detectives shooting at Phillips with their 9mm pistols. Detective Vince Bancroft and Detective Kevin Harley in particular were able to position themselves behind cover and fire between 15 and 24 rounds at Phillips from a distance of approximately 55 feet. After Matasareanu backed the Chevrolet Celebrity out of the handicapped space in the north parking lot, Phillips received a gunshot wound to his left wrist, based upon helicopter news footage that showed him react to pain. At the same approximate time, LAPD gunfire struck the Heckler & Koch rifle that Phillips was firing, rendering it inoperable with a penetration to the receiver. Phillips discarded it and rearmed himself with another assault rifle from the trunk of the sedan. After LAPD radio operators received the second officer down call from police at the shootout, a tactical alert was issued.
We need help out here, we got officers down. Yes, you better get an attack alert here.
Any unit know how many officers are down? We have one.
More than one.
There's more than one officer down. SWAT is being notified to airlift.
An LAPD Metropolitan Division SWAT team, Donnie Anderson, Steve Gomez, Peter Weiriter, and Richard Massa, arrived 18 minutes after the shooting had begun. They were armed with AR-15s and wore running shoes and shorts under their body armour, as they had been on an exercise run when they received the call. Upon arrival, they commandeered a nearby armoured car, driven by Hector Quevedo and David Campbell, which was used to extract wounded civilians and officers from the scene. While still in the parking lot, Matasareanu was shot in the right buttock, the right leg, and the left forearm. A fourth projectile then lacerated his upper right eye socket and prompted him to duck behind the hood of the getaway car in shock. He subsequently abandoned his duffel bag of money, entered the getaway vehicle, and started the engine. Phillips retrieved the HK-91 from the open trunk and continued firing upon officers while walking alongside the sedan, using it for cover. As Phillips approached the passenger side of the getaway vehicle, he was hit in the shoulder and his rifle was struck in the receiver and magazine by bullets fired by police. After firing a few more shots with one arm, Phillips discarded the HK-91 and retrieved the Norinco Type 56 before exiting the parking lot and retreating onto the street while Matasareanu drove down the road.
Suspects are fleeing. They're heavily armored. Suspects are wearing body armor.
Suspects are wearing body armor, attempting to flee. All officers and suspects are wearing body armor.
At 9:52 a.m, Phillips turned east on Archwood Street and took cover behind a parked semi-truck, where he continued to fire at the police until his rifle jammed. Lieutenant Michael Ranshaw and officers Conrado Torres, John Caparelli, and Ed Brentlinger were present and firing back at Phillips. Unable to clear the relatively easy jam because of a gunshot wound to his left wrist, he dropped the rifle and drew his Beretta 92 FS pistol, which he then began firing. He was then shot in the right hand by Officer Torres, causing him to drop the pistol. After retrieving it, he placed the muzzle under his chin and fired. As he fell, Officer John Caparelli shot him in the upper torso, severing his spine. Either bullet may have been fatal. Officers across the street continued to shoot Phillips's body several times while he was on the ground. After the firing had stopped, officers in the area surrounded Phillips, handcuffed him, and removed his ski mask. Though obviously deceased at this point, it was still standard procedure for police to arrest a criminal of his severity as if he were alive. During this time, Matasareanu continued in the vehicle. However, the vehicle was rendered inoperable after two of its tyres were shot out and the windscreen covered in bullet holes. At 9:56 a.m, he attempted to carjack a yellow 1963 Jeep Gladiator on Archwood by shooting at the driver, who fled on foot 3 blocks east of where Phillips died. Matasareanu quickly transferred all of his weapons and ammunition from the getaway car, but was unable to operate the Jeep due to the driver engaging the electrical kill switch and taking the keys before fleeing. As news helicopters hovered overhead, a patrol car driven by SWAT officers Donnie Anderson, Steve Gomez, and Richard Massa quickly arrived and stopped on the opposite side of the truck to where the Chevrolet was stopped.
That unit is a Metro unit, ma'am, and they're engaging the suspect. They're not able to back off. Still need of rescue.
Air unit advised the unit close to the suspect is Metro engaging.
Matasareanu left the truck, took cover behind the original getaway car, and engaged them in 2.5 minutes of almost uninterrupted gunfire. Matasareanu's chest armour deflected a double tap from SWAT officer Anderson, which briefly winded him before he continued firing.
Be advised, the suspect is proned out. He may be shooting underneath the vehicle towards officers.
The suspect is proned out and possibly shooting at the officers from under the vehicle on Archwood between Radford and Hines.
Anderson fired his AR-15 below the cars and wounded Matasareanu in his unprotected lower legs. He was soon unable to continue and put his hands up to show surrender.
One suspect on Archwood is
Ambulance personnel were following standard procedure in hostile situations by refusing to enter the hot zone, as the area was not cleared and Matasareanu was still considered to be dangerous. The police radioed for an ambulance, but Matasareanu, loudly swearing profusely and still goading the police to shoot him, died before the ambulance and EMTs were allowed to reach the scene, almost 70 minutes later. Most of the incident, including the death of Phillips and surrender of Matasareanu, was broadcast live by news helicopters, which hovered over the scene and televised the action as events unfolded. Over 300 law enforcement officers from various forces had responded to the citywide tactical alert. By the time the shooting had stopped, Phillips and Matasareanu had fired 1,100 rounds, approximately 1 round every 2 seconds. The police fired 650 rounds. The entire incident lasted 44 minutes. As per their standard operating procedures at the time, the responding patrol officers directed their fire at the centre of mass, or torso, of Matasareanu and Phillips. However, armoured body armour worn by Phillips and Matasareanu covered all of their vitals except their heads, enabling them to absorb pistol bullets and shotgun pellets, while Matasareanu's chest armour, thanks to a steel armour plate, successfully withstood a hit from a SWAT officer's AR-15. The service pistols carried by the first responding officers were of insufficient power and used the wrong type of ammunition for penetrating even pistol-rated soft body armour. Furthermore, the police were pinned down by fully automatic suppressive fire, making it difficult for them to execute the type of well-aimed return fire that would be required to attempt headshots. Phillips was shot 11 times, including his self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chin, while Matasareanu had been shot 29 times and died from trauma due to excessive blood loss from multiple gunshot wounds to his left thigh. The shootout contributed to motivating the arming of rank-and-file police officers in Los Angeles and nationwide with semi-automatic rifles. The ineffectiveness of the standard small-caliber police pistols and shotguns in penetrating the robbers' body armour led to a trend in the United States towards arming selected police patrol officers, not just SWAT teams, with heavier firepower such as semi-automatic AR-15 style rifles. SWAT teams, whose close-quarters battle weaponry usually consisted of submachine guns that fired pistol cartridges such as the Heckler & Koch MP5, began supplementing them with AR-15 rifles and carbines. On April 17, 1997, police raided a house in Anaheim traced to Phillips and Matasareanu. Among the items seized included incendiary ammunition, flak jackets and ballistic helmets, approximately $400,000 in stolen cash, and various firearms. One particular firearm, a short-barreled AR-15 with an aftermarket red dot sight, was later released from evidence for use by a law enforcement agency. 7 months after the incident, the Department of Defense gave 600 surplus M16 rifles to the LAPD, which were issued to each patrol sergeant. LAPD patrol vehicles began carrying AR-15s as standard, with bullet-resistant Kevlar plating in their doors as well. Also, as a result of this incident, LAPD authorised its officers to carry a .45 ACP caliber semi-automatic pistol as duty sidearms, specifically the Smith & Wesson models 4506 and 4566. Prior to 1997, only LAPD SWAT officers were authorised to carry a .45 ACP caliber pistol, specifically the M1911A1 .45 ACP semi-automatic pistol. On June 12, 1998, LAPD Chief of Police Bernard C. Parks released to the Board of Police Commissioners a memorandum detailing his review of officers' use of force during the North Hollywood shootout. The memorandum contained many details about the shootout, including badge numbers of officers and detectives, where they positioned themselves in the perimeter around the robbers with distances of fire, and how many rounds they fired from their weapons. Parks commended department personnel for their action to distract the robbers and obstruct them from attempting to evade police. The memorandum lists the injuries of all officers who received injuries at the hands of the robbers. A lawsuit on behalf of Matasareanu's children was filed by lawyer Stephen Yagman against members of the LAPD, claiming Matasareanu's civil rights had been violated and that he was allowed to bleed to death. The lawsuit was tried in the United States District Court in February and March 2000 and ended in a mistrial with a hung jury. The suit was later dropped when Matasareanu's family agreed to dismiss the action with a waiver of malicious prosecution. The year following the shootout, 18 officers of the LAPD received the Departmental Medal of Valor for their actions and met President Bill Clinton. Over the 44 minutes of shooting, 12 police officers and 8 civilians were injured, but miraculously, no one other than the robbers were killed. Thank you for listening to this episode of Shadow Crimes. If you liked this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media and check out our website at shadowcrimes.com, where mysteries thrive and shadows speak.